Everybody, and welcome to a demo of the Enzu Patriot Portal. I believe within the industry of service provider private clouds that this is one of the only truly single pane of glass tools in existence. It allows you to manage everything, and I'm really excited to show you that today. So why don't we go ahead and get started, and you get to your main screen and you do your sign in. It is going to ask you to do two-factor authentication. You should set this up. I'm going to skip it. This is in a demo platform. It is isolated in Detroit. So as you can see, when you get in here, you've got down the left side your dashboard, which you're in now. You've got the ability to manage compute. You can go to projects, which actually are also on your dashboard. So when you hit projects, you come back to this screen. You can manage your networking, firewalls, monitoring, self-healing, which is high availability, something that usually you have to have an on-premise copy of VMware vSphere to have, so you get full access. I think it's really exciting with this tool to find out that you get root access and you basically get an on-prem experience in the cloud. So for those people who are trying to figure out, hey, what happens when I decide I no longer want to be with VMware, or there are several options out there, right, that you may or may not want to continue to work with. And you say, hey, what happens? How do I migrate? What do I do about all these features that I have? Most of them, if not all of them, exist, and then we have some of our own unique features, and that's something I'm pretty excited to make sure you see. And HA is one of them, and that's something you will struggle to get with other service providers. Support, so ticketing, managing all your tickets, permissions, just managing the system and users and roles, and then audit logs. You also have a deploying instance as a quick action. So this is where you, if you have templates built, which we'll talk about, you can go in, click deploy an instance, you'll set the whole instance up, you'll pick all your OS, and it'll be off to the races. And you can import instances. So if you've got instances that you've exported, VMDK files, OVF, different files like that, you will be able to pull this in and launch it. And you can launch it as a pre-built, or it'll launch exactly as it was exported. So it'll set all the resources and do all that work. Okay. So let's get into the rest of this. You have an Ajax search engine. When you use the Ajax search feature, you can go through and find just about anything in here. And you will be able to VMs, instances, all kinds of things. You can also click this if you want to close the left side and you don't want to see it. You got your hamburger and you get rid of just, if you're working in here and you just want to be doing work without seeing everything going on over there. Locations. So if you have a multi-location system, you can choose the different locations that you are going to work in, and then it will open the dashboard for that location. So managing all of this, it's skinned to the location that it's at, and all the resource management pools will be able to be accessed and seen individually. And then you can, this is your profile, you can go in and edit it, set up your little favicon, whatever you want to do, or you can sign out from there. Once you're on your dashboard, you'll see your utilization, so CPU, memory, and disk utilization. You also see your totals for those pieces of information, what it's in use, and what's available to you. So this helps you do some resource planning as you go along. You can refresh this, and now you get into your projects. You can add a new project, or you can work in your existing projects so you can view them, you can update resources, or you can delete them here, okay? So let's say we look at any one of these projects. Let's view one real quick, and we get into the project. Once you get into the project, this is where you can start to see what's in use. I have this project turned off right now, so it's not in utilization. I can update the resources while I'm in here. I can look at my test instances. I can see if I've got a VM running, or I can deploy VMs right now or deploy instances right now. I can add sub-projects to this. So let's say I wanted in this to have a development team do some work, and then I can move it to production. I can make sure that sub is like IOH test development, so that I can then have IOH test in production later. And so I can keep that naming convention and manage it. The other kind of really cool thing, think about this as tenancy, subtenancy. Where that gets really interesting is you build a project which might be new company. You bought a company, you've got your existing platform, you bring in the new company, whatever it's named, you set up those employees, you build all those roles and permissions, and you set them up to a project, and you set up all their sub projects, and they work in there. When you're ready to start migrating the new employees and the instances into your full production, you can start to do that and then and give them role changes and work them across the entire ecosystem. Or if you always want to keep these ecosystems separate, then you have the ability to manage all of that within this tool. You can also add user notes and you'll see any audit logs and you'll see any alerts for this, okay? So let's go ahead and go back to instances. So you've seen how the projects work, and now we get into all the instances under the Compute tab. In here, you can view, archive, export as a CSV, Ajax search engine again for searching through here. And if you export as a CSV for all the different reasons you might, so you can see all the different VMs and resources to be able to share with a team that might want to see that data. Okay. You see what the number of the instance is, what project it's set to. I often don't make these changes. I'm the one who manages this portal most of the time. And then you can see what node it's on. So you see this is a 4-node cluster, which means there's 3 production nodes and a +1 node for high availability. So we always deliver at a minimum n+1. And after that, we can deliver an n plus anything or all the way up through like a 2n architecture. Okay. You can name them, not something I spend a lot of time doing again. And then you can see like the cores, the memory, the CPU utilization, the status of the machine, and did you enable DR? Okay, and then your actions, view or archive. The beauty of archive is the archive, we'll get to it. The beauty of the archive under instances, which you see over here, is that if it's an instance you want to save in case you ever need to bring it up for compliance, or there's data or intellectual property, but you don't want it being used anymore, you just archive it into the system, and then you can control who does and doesn't see the archive. You're going to see just how granular that permission system is with us. So let's go view a running instance. Let's view this Ubuntu test instance. Okay. So you click on view, you get into this instance, and then you have all these tools down the left to do work on this instance. Right now, we're on the dashboard tool, so you can see the power status is running. Self-healing is enabled. Again, self-healing, high availability. This means that it is being managed. And so if this instance were to have an issue, or the machine had an issue, then the instance would automatically engage in its high availability status. All stuff, again, you can set up, and I'll show you that. You can see which node. So node 4 is the high availability node. And so it's running on that one right now. CPU usage. So this was assigned 6 CPUs. You've got your memory usage, you've got all your storage usage, and your boot disk usage, right? So you've got all those available to you. You can stop it or reboot it quickly here, and you can convert this to a template. What makes that really cool is if this is like a database and you have similar sizing for databases, then you make a template for that and you name it database, and then you just keep launching them as needed. So you don't have to rebuild these from scratch each time. So you can have a bunch of databases set up, okay? So again, you can go look at the hardware down the left side. You can see what the disk action is, and then you can see how the hardware is set up and get your different information, your controllers, what you did for out of file store. The ISO on this was Ubuntu 2204. You can see your hard disk space and your network devicing. Your cloud init access, I do not have that enabled on this one, and I'll show you in permissions. I turn that on and off, but you have cloud init access if it's something you want. And then you have your options. So again, you can name it. You can go through start boot. This one we said no. What is the start shutdown order? And this one is any. But if you've got some critical applications that need things to launch in a particular order, you set all that up. Your OS type, your boot order, hot plugs, and any guest agents that are enabled. Okay. So we get to access. So access is the ability to have IPMI or out-of-bound access to your system. We do allow this. Again, something else we allow to give you a very on-prem-like experience, but yet you are in a service provider private cloud. So you have IPMI access, you'll launch this. It would do a pop-out, so I'm not going to do it right now, but it takes you into a true IPMI console. Okay. Power management. So you have your graceful shutdown. You can force power this thing off, or you can power cycle it from here. Then you have your metrics for your system. And so you'll set the dates. It's pulling the metrics on this machine live right now, so I can see it. You can see CPU utilization. You can see spikes, although, again, this is a test environment, so there's going to be no fun spikes to see. What's my disk IO? Where is it at? We're not taxing the disk, so there's not going to be much going on. What's the memory like? You can see my usage is incredibly low versus the 16 gig that was set. You can see network traffic, which again is incredibly small on this one. And then you can see your uptime, which this one has stayed up. So you can look at uptime and look at where that's at. From here, one of the other features you have is to go in and change your dates and do updates and be able to see, span of time in case there was an issue. This is where you'll set up self-healing. Okay, so it is enabled on this. You can disable it for a machine. Max restarts and max relocates. For certain applications, and especially Windows-based, server-based, Windows Server operating system stuff, max restart can be really important. What group it's in. So if you have different group names, you can manage what group it's in. You can manage any comments you want. So what is it for? What does it do? And what's the resource type? Audit logs. First, we keep these in perpetuity. I mean, all the data, all of it, not after 30 days, it goes into some minimum status. Okay. So you have who is the user? It's usually me. What is the message? What was done? So I did console access. I clicked that button. It looks like yesterday when I was doing something, right? So it shows that I did that. Everything I do is logged and managed in here. And then you can see these are the logs from the beginning. If you don't want that, there's 148 entries on this right now. If you don't want that, you can set some time limits, but it saves everything: IP addresses, when it was done, who did it, and what they were up to. Okay. So backups. So this is where you'd actually take snapshots, schedule backup jobs, and manage your backup archive. So you actually have snapshot capability, and then you have, again, a search engine for your snapshot. So you create a snapshot here, you go through the process, tell it you want to create one, and it would say, what's the snapshot name and what's the description? So I'm going to cancel out of that, and then it would go through the process and make a snapshot of this VM. Then you have backup jobs. So you can see every Monday, at midnight 20, I do a backup of this and it is enabled. And that is running right now. I can add more backup jobs if I want. I can add dailies, hourlies. I just have it set for weeklies right now. Okay. So this backup main, which is my archive for this VM. And again, you can go to backups otherwise for a larger look, but you can see it's been doing it and it is here. Now I have all the backups. There's 6,243 running backups in this system. You can restore the entire backup right now, or we do have the capability of file restore. So you go into and you look, I can look in here and I can pull the files I want. So kind of the cool thing about this is, again, it's not software based. You're not logging into something else. It's not as granular necessarily as some of the very advanced software backups. But for most people, this is going to do everything they need to make sure they have backups, that they can restore files, and that they've got their snapshot system. And they're not running agents, they're not putting it somewhere else, and they're not waiting for it to boot up or come back in a system that is running on minimal resources. It's actually active in here. You can do it on storage because we triple replicate all of our data to begin with. So you already have incredible data protection, but you could do file restore for deletion out of this. And you could connect backup storage to this on directly to the system on something like iSCSI if you just wanted some S3 or some cold storage, or we could set up a backup system in another location if you wanted to have backups somewhere else. Okay. So backup tasks, you can come in and view the logs. All this is showing you is it was backed up, what happened, what the status, job errors, and I set the backup up, so I'm sure there are some. And then you can view the logs of what those errors are. Okay. This is where you set up disaster recovery. You either enable it or you don't, and then you manage that in the DR manager, or you can delete the VM from here if you didn't want to archive it. So that is how you manage instances. Here's a look at templates. So you can see I've created some. We can view these templates. So if you have a template, it just says, hey, how's it built? This one's pretty limited in its build, but it is available. And you do have templates that you can set up. All your ISO images are here. Again, you can download one from a URL and load it. If you'd like it to be permanent in this private cloud, it can stay permanent. and it will only be exposed to you. So nobody will ever see whether you built a golden image or you have a custom ISO, and you can mount a disk as well, but you can see you can also choose different things within here. Usually you'll tell us what you want. We'll have it all preloaded that is based on what you do. And again, very simply, you can throw them in here on your own URL. You can also ship them to us and we can have it done. Archives. So these are the ones I've archived, which means you will no longer see them in the instances. And so you can restore these archives. One of the beauties of this archival structure is you could actually bring in, like if you're a VMware, all your VMDK files or all your OVF files, and you can put them here and save them. You could always go to a free VMDK viewer, and if for compliance reasons, so let's say we migrate you from VMware, you'll always have a copy in here, so you won't have to have some backup drive somewhere, and you can take it, you can restore it into a viewer, and you can go out and make sure people have that data that you were supposed to save, okay? So projects, I told you is going to take us right back to the dashboard. So let's jump into networking. So networking is where you can manage VLANs. So one of the beauties of our system is you can get dedicated top of rack switches. So if you want to bring all your own VLANs and then you want to do all your own Q&Q management, you are more than welcome to do all of that, which means you can tag all your public and private traffic. And when we get into the interfaces or we get into some of the firewalling, you can also set up all the one-to-one rules. You can deliver a layer 2 connection to us and keep everything private between 2 locations. So, or we can set one up for you. We can set it up in a lot of ways, dark fiber, waves, or just a traditional layer 2 otherwise, okay? So interfaces. So this is where you're going to be your LAN, your DR tunneling, and just anything else you want to set up. So this is where you're going to have all those interfaces set up. This is where you're going to manage all your routes. So you've got your static routes, what's enabled, what's your gateway, and then you're going to see your routing tables, which you can go through and get set up depending on how you want this thing designed. So firewalling. You have all your aliases in your firewall. And so you go through and you get everything, what's trusted, how it works. You've got your sales stuff, your ports, all the different things that you want to get set up, and you can add aliases here. You can also start working on your rules within the firewall. So again, your firewall is built in. If you want to use an outside firewall, you can. We will rack it in the top of the rack if you want. We will connect it. You just wouldn't be able to manage it within this tool anymore, right? So the beauty of this, again, is this thing has everything available, but we do allow outside connectivity. So it's up to you how you want it built. So I can build rules here. I can build the WAN, the LAN, IPsec, main to DR tunnel, port forwarding, VPNs, and we can do advanced NATing. So advanced NATing, I get some outbound controls, I get some one-to-one controls, and we do have MPTV6 built in. So if that's something you're using, we don't see it very often, but if that's something you're using, you have that capability. Okay. So the monitoring engine, this is often something that's very popular for people to review. And the monitoring engine, so now it's going to go through and it's going to pull from that engine, right? So we are looking at alerts, actions, and metrics. Also, this is where you're going to manage alert rules and triggers and get all of those things set up and go through the process. And this pulls from the alert engine, so it does take a second. It's the one thing that does take a second to really boot in this system. So if you have acknowledged alerts, you would see them all here. If you have historical alerts, you would see them all here. And if you had active alerts, they would be up. So if you had acknowledged alerts, you'd want to see them, you'd go to them. Active alerts and historical alerts are what is here, okay? And then we go to actions once we're in this system. And the actions is where I build everything. So I've already got some actions set up, right? These two are enabled. Do I have a CPU usage alert on this machine? Notify me of CPU usage on the entire cluster. And then I had test email, which I'm in an action test now. So it's action test now. I built it so that if something happened, it actually took an action immediately. And so it had auto intervention and I did not have to actually manually intervene. But we go to create an action here. You'll also notice the search engine always exists. I name the action, the type of action. I want an or I want to write an expression. And then what's the conditions? So I can go through, it's a trigger, it's a host, so I can go through all of that. And I can add conditions, okay? What is the duration or operation period? I can get really granular there. Do I want to pause operations, right? What do I want to do? And who gets notified? And, do you want an email? Do you want a text? Do you want, how would you like this to work? And actions can have time. So, hey, if within 1 minute, the analyst doesn't respond, please notify, the office admin, and then please notify all of sales, which, probably would never happen. You don't want us in here all the time, but you might go in and say, notify all of engineering, or, hey, you better notify the executive staff because people aren't responding and we have a big problem. Okay. And then you can save this or cancel it out. From the actions, you again monitoring metrics of the entire cluster. I showed you the monitoring for a VM, but now you can you can monitor the nodes. So we can look at metrics by node, or we can go back and look at metrics by VMs. So you can open each VM here. So if you're working in one and you want to see something, you can get to the metrics of it. Or if you just want to start working in metrics, you come here, you can look at the latest data for it, you can look at the metrics, and you can look at any triggers that you have built for any one of these VMs. And there are third-party webhooks and APIs available. If you want all this to API out into Splunk or some other management plane, there are plenty out there in the world, like an Alert Logic for log management or log alerting. You can start to set all of that stuff up as well. But again, you don't have to. It is all in this tool, or you can push it because you have a log aggregator for many other things that you have running. So let's look at self-healing. So when we go into self-healing, we look at the cluster status. It's good. We can see the 4 clusters that are in here, and when they've been active and when they're idle. Node resource management, what VMs are set to self-healing, and then we can see the self-healing policies. Do you want to add policies? Do you want to edit or remove policies? And then you come in and you can see max restart, max relocate, and where. And then this one I did set to group 1 just to show you have some group allocation. We can see all the groups that are available and where they exist. You can edit these groups, you can delete these groups, create new groups. Okay, so you have high availability policies and practices all built in to be managed. DR Manager. This is where you're going to manage disaster recovery. So you're going to manage disaster recovery in 2 ways. One, DR in the same location. So this is really going to be what happens if I have corruption and issues, and DR in a second location. So if you want a second location set up, and you have something critical and you believe, or you're required to have 2 locations, and you believe high availability and will not protect you enough, then we set up a second site. You set those things up into DR, and then you can go through and manage that. You can view them. You can put them out in a console. So you can take them out to like IPMI, and then you can fall back. So if you have this running and you're on it, so these VMs currently aren't running, but if you had them running and your DR resources, you could fall back to production when you have corrected the error. And high availability, that is all managed differently, but within DR, you have these tools available. And I want to again, this is not the same as having, let's say a Zerto, where you've got all this granular stuff. But again, most people, they don't do their testing. They don't really use all the feature sets. There are a lot of nice to haves. And this gives you all the DR you would ever need for making sure you're up, making sure you're running, and the ability to fall back. Okay. So you've got tickets in the support engine here. You can manage tickets, what tickets are currently open. You can create a ticket from here, what tickets are closed, or you just create a ticket also live on the left side. This is a really cool section. So we're going to talk about permissions. So we're going to go into users. So you can create a new user or you can invite a user. If you click invite a user, you put in their email and click invite. And after you do that, what's going to come up is something that looks a little like this, because you need to set up what role you're giving them and what you're going to allow them to do. In the beginning, I said this was very granular, and this is where we can talk about it depending on the role, and I can create new roles right here if I wanted to. Depending on the role, I can say, hey, instances, wait a minute, I don't want them to have access to all the hardware. I do or don't want them to have an init. I do or don't want them to have the ability to read, write, delete, or edit options here. What access are they allowed, right? What are they allowed to do? And I can do this in an incredible granular way and give them all these separate rules. I can give them access to only particular templates. I can give them access to only certain DR pieces, all the way down to I can give them access to a particular VM, read only, that was built for them. Maybe they just need to say, yes, it exists, and I showed it to somebody, and it's part of what they do, an auditor maybe. So you could set up your auditors. You don't want them in here actually doing any work, but you do need them to be able to come in and see all of this. So depending on the role, I have this arrow, scroll down again. You have all this availability in what they are or not allowed to do, okay? And you can go by type, or again, you could create a new role. You'd start the role name, you'd hit save, and you'd go through the process of building out what that role looks like. Okay. You already saw invite a user, but if you come here, you invite a user, you would you put in their email, right? And then you invite them, and then you do all the assignment we talked about. Okay. I did a test one a while back. I invited them just to show kind of how the process goes. It's really simple. I don't really want to waste your time with it on this. Audit logs, the last thing, and always something people definitely want to see. I talked about all the audit trail and that it's in perpetuity, and that is true. The difference here is earlier you saw the audit logs of that particular instance. Here, this is the audit logs of your entire ecosystem. So you can go through the search engine and do, see what's out there and see if there's any backups. So there's the backup jobs. Okay. So depending on what you're looking for, you've got an Ajax search engine. You go in, you got 1,073 entries. You don't want to scroll these things 10 at a time. Start using your search engine. You can also, change it to how many, if you really want to, so you can scroll a little easier. But you can go through this thing and you've got the ability to do some searching. And reiterate, third-party webhooks, all these logs or APIs, all these logs out, and you've got the ability to run the system. So that was a pretty good amount of information. I hope you guys really enjoyed this overview. Some real key takeaways: a lot of ability to do everything you ever wanted to do, and you don't really need to log out into other systems. Manage all your locations in one place using a drop down. And you have the ability to manage your bare metal. So you can go between the two. Bare metal is its own portal because it has different feature sets. So if you've got your core infrastructure, you've got an edge built with, say, bare metal, or you're doing containers or infrastructure as code, because you can overlay SuperCloud onto this and have infrastructure as code. So you can launch infrastructure globally. All of those tools you'll be able to get to in here and manage, and you'll just go between those two platforms. It's the only time you go between the two platforms, but we will set up your single sign-on so that you just click between the two for work. You'll set up all your rules. The difference is in bare metal, you're going to have different tools over here because this has got all the cloud-based, VM-based virtualization tools, whereas bare metal has different tools for managing, cloud-native type architectures. So really hope you enjoyed this today. I hope this gives you a real good idea how the portal works. If you have questions, please reach out to me. And I look forward to seeing you guys out in the field.